back to this whole thread that, okay,
but anything that needs to happen which is out of the ordinary is always top down.
Yeah, it has to be coming from the top. So this whole journey from, let's say, $500 a month to $5,000 a month to $10,000 a month is a bit of a sometimes discontinuity, sometimes continuity. But just in the terms of navigating retention as a subject and putting the right kind of infrastructure together from a technology lens, from a people lens, from a process lens, from a data lens, what would be your key milestones? That would be, let's say, a 0 to 1 year journey. What should that be covered?
Milestones in terms of what needs to be put together?
Yeah.
I think first is the mindset, man. Without the mindset, there's literally nothing that works, because all of this needs capital, it needs bandwidth, you need an FTE, you need a bunch of resources.
This is what I was trying to say.
It's bodies at the problem, right?
Yeah.
To some extent, it's bodies at the problem. So first is the mindset, and I think that by itself takes time.
Really?
It takes a certain amount of time, because as I mentioned, if you're looking at any kind of mid to large scale organization, then maybe their fights are not daily fights. But if you're looking at a early to a mid stage organization, then everything's a daily fight.
Sure.
So this conversation somehow, unfortunately, might just get lost in the meandering 20,000 crisis that hits in a day.
Isn't that something to solve for? Because that's kind of what
it is part of it. I'm just saying that it takes a little longer than one can expect. I might be wrong, but broadly what I've seen is
whether you are naturally able to do this or not, but you're better off doing this from the early days. So the mindset should be kind of theoretically solved.
So it's like this, you know that you are supposed to walk 45 minutes a day. Do you really do it?
Yeah, I get it. So it should be done, but is it done are two different things.
Yeah,
so
I mean, everyone recognizes the importance of it.
Yeah.
Right? You're supposed to work out, man. But most people don't, right?
Yep, true.
So, so screw that. I mean, that's irrelevant whether it's about recognizing the problem and then solving for the problem. Recognition of the problem, 100%. I think everyone recognizes it. Also because they've been forced to recognize it.
In some sense, the commitment to solving it in an aggressive fashion is the path that still seems to be...
It depends on the priority list में कहाँ पे आता है वो. So, एक तो उसको priority list में ऊपर लाना, which is the mindset setting, right? कि हाँ चलो ये 15 चीजें, but ये मुझे ऊपर लाना पड़ेगा, because अगर ये ऊपर नहीं लाऊंगा, then I can't solve what's happening downstream.
Sure.
So, you have to find use cases for why that should come up. Right? A lot of times you will say, I need to work on the retention funnel, and they'll be like, but वो तो ठीक है. We have larger problems, let's say, in terms of a product, or let's say we have a logistics challenge or some of this. What's the use of deploying retention on top of this when we understand that these systems are broken? First, let's solve these systems. Let's fix these systems, and then we'll deploy retention. So hence there'll be a better experience. They're not wrong. They're not wrong.
Sure.
You can't go out there and contest by saying, I mean, I'm going to invite a whole bunch of people to my house, but I don't have food to feed them.
Sure.
Right? So they'll say, dude, I don't have enough. You're saying you're going to do retention, but you have only 2 products. How are you going to cross-sell, upsell? What are you going to do? Again, fair point.
Sure.
So you have to, and that's what I mean by setting the mindset, which is, what is the right time to contextualize it as a business metric, which does not end up impacting every other function, right? And it's still, because it's not the most prevalent revenue driver, it's still potentially about, 10 to 12%. If you are doing it really well, 10 to 12% of your revenue uptake. Most people don't even want to care for the 10 to 12% when there are so many other things to solve for.
Okay.
If I can reduce my COGS by 20%, then I have honestly made that money back. Right? So first is the mindset. That's my priority one. Second, I think, is finding someone who's going to be the owner for this.
Sure.
Someone who's clearly saying, I am the sponsor in some form. I will take responsibility for this. More often than not, it does become a marketing role, which is
usually
absolutely
that's the natural
fine.
gravitation.
Which is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with it. So you will have someone in the marketing team who's going to take responsibility of it. Now here is where it starts to get super interesting. More often than not, this person has either been exposed to some aspects of retention marketing or almost no aspects of retention marketing. But there is an intent to learn retention marketing. Right? It's also what I've seen is early stage, when people wanted to run Facebook ads, Google ads, all of that, I wanted to learn it, right? तो मुझे सीखना है. Google Academy चलाया, उसने सबको सिखा दिया, Facebook ने सिखा दिया, Creator, Studio, सब कुछ सिखा दिया उसने. Unfortunately, there's no one who's teaching retention marketing.
It's breaking a stab at it, but sure, early days.
Yeah. Dude, the problem is that you have a bunch of founders who are relying on one team to run something which they have little or no experience to run, and there is no one to make that process better.
Sure.
So now, if there is a way to make sure there's training enabled on not just the tools of retention marketing, but the entire system engineering of
Hmm.
retention marketing, I think that's really where it starts to get really, really, really good. Yeah. So
Fantastic.
for me, the third priority is training that person.
Hmm.
Now, training, unfortunately, I know you guys are trying to set up something.
Sure.
All the best.
It's a WIP.
Do well. No, because that's important. If you do well, then the rest of the ecosystem will start to do well.
Sure.
But as of now, there is nothing.
Yeah.
So now what happens is either me teaching or someone else in the team who's a little bit more experienced than me potentially teaching. Someone who's done it in the past. Maybe I'm going to rely on someone else outside. I'm going to rely on a different brand ka someone. I'm going to rely on them.
Hmm.
You know, the problem with that is that it's only as good as their knowledge.
Sure.
So it could potentially be a garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or it could be so non-sectoral relevant that I'm going to start off with the wrong practices. So the training part is actually a very large miss right now.
Hmm.
The third thing, so this is happening. So you have the mindset shift, then you have the sponsorship, you have the training. These three things are happening. The fourth thing that now needs to happen is setting expectations.
Okay.
Just because you've deployed someone who's trained and you've deployed a tool doesn't mean that it's going to start firing from day one.
Sure.
So setting that expectation, putting very clear, achievable milestones, making sure that there's a certain amount of, negotiating capacity and capability in the systems team, that is super important.
You want to put some more color to it when you say on day zero, the expectation should be more calibrated in some sense?
I think,
what is it that people are expecting and what should be the right approach to it?
For someone to say that I'm going to have a 60% retention down the funnel when I've literally never deployed anything, and then that's fallacy.
Fair enough.
Or them saying that, okay, 30% of my revenue contribution is going to come from my retention funnel, that's also fallacy.
Okay.
Right? Now you might, some people will do a Google search. What is the kind of retention metric that, globally, okay, you're looking at US metrics, fantastic retention metrics to a very large extent. You're going to see massive amounts of revenue contribution. You're going to see lots of brand loyalty, brand love, all of that. Your NPS is going to be south of potentially 90-97%, and you're going to be like, okay, that's the kind of metric I need to chase. No. The Indian ecosystem is extremely different. The consumer is extremely different. We are very highly distributed. We have marketplace businesses which are going to come back and challenge your retention. You are always going to find it extremely difficult to find the right kind of data. We spoke about dirty data.
Yep.
All of these things taken into account, there has to be a very realistic framework that is applied to what the expectation setting for management should be for retention marketing.
Fair.
The problem is when you don't do that, then you are setting up a system that is designed to fail.
Yep. Also to disappoint in some sense.
Designed to fail, ना? Fail हो गया, तो अब तो disappoint करेगा ही. Obviously, option क्या है? क्योंकि पैसा डाला था, उसमें कुछ हुआ नहीं.
जो आना चाहिए था, उसकी expectation गलत थी.
Correct. Right. So I think that is super important, man.
But इसमें एक बात ये समझो, so in terms of just the whole, ROI के लिए investment लगता है पहले, तो investment का calibration, how do you do? How much is too little versus too much? Because if you don't put in the right people, the right training and the right tooling, then all of this will anyway not go far.
Yeah.
So how do you decide how much is it worth it? Do you compare a ROAS metric, then I'm going to pay Google X amount of money, get this kind of revenue out of it. If I were to put this kind of money on a tool and a people and a comms cost, then I should at least get this kind of revenue out of it.
I think
is there a framework to it?
Yeah, the one very clear way of looking at it is what's the opportunity cost. Right now, if I'm letting go of 90 people on the table and I'm keeping 10 of the 100 that I've acquired, then that's potentially 90, transactions that I'm letting go of over a period of time, right? So the opportunity cost is the first thing that you need to look at.
In terms of what else could I have done with the same money?
What
with acquiring?
No, what kind of money would I have got if these people would have come back and repeated?
So you're saying from a repeat lens, if I've gotten delta extra, then this delta is the part of the ROI.
Right. So now at the end of the day, if you have the potential of bringing 25 people back to you, right, and 4 रुपए करेगा वो, तो 100 रुपए बनने हैं तुम्हारे.
Fair enough.
ठीक है. तो मतलब वो 100 रुपए है.
100 रुपए बनाने के लिए मैं खर्च कितना करने को तैयार?
Correct. Right. So now at the end of the day, if I know that मुझे 100 रुपए बनने हैं, I should be able to spend at least, let's say, 50 rupees on that.
Sure.
If I am
but that's
smart.
Assuming a 2x.
Whatever I'm saying, broadly that it could be 30 rupees.
No, the ROI का multiple क्या होना चाहिए is the question.
Depends on the category, man.
Right.
Depends completely on the category, right?
Gross margins related है?
Not really, because that's kind of arbitrage.
So it's related to category. Just take an example of any category. Give me an
So imagine a situation where you have, let's say, nutraceutical.
Sure.
Extremely habit forming. Every 30 days you need to take it, right? Gross margins are upwards of about 60-65%.
Easy.
Right. I'm very happy to take a 35-40% ACOS on a repeat also.
Fair enough.
No issues. because I'm still making that 20% and
Yeah.
I know that my LTV is very, very high.
Sure.
Take a different category where the gross margin itself is potentially about 35-40%.
But that anyways a struggle in D2C.
Right. So वो है. Now 35-40% नहीं है. Lots of companies which are operating at a 35-40% because branding cost is high, packaging cost is high, your COGS are high because of the quality of the material. So many businesses are like that, right? 50% also. But in that you can't potentially, if your gross margin is 50%, you can't really part ways with 50% on that revenue, right? Unless you're charging a ridiculous premium, which also then again is a big challenge because to get people back, you're potentially discounting it higher. So, it's a little bit of a vicious cycle. But at any point of time, if my performance marketing is, let's say, giving me about a 2.5-3x ROAS,
right,
then my retention funnel ideally should match that. I'm saying match it.
Match it, if not exceed
I'm just saying match it. If it exceeds it, phenomenal.
Bonus.
Phenomenal. I would love for that to happen.
But don't start with the expectation that should be like 2x of this.
But at least match it. Right?
Fair enough.
Because if you're not even matching it and it's, own captive audience, then boss, question the product.
Something's wrong.
Question the product, no. Question a lot of things. Question pricing, question product, question...
The whole funnel, somewhere something is
broken.
broken.
कुछ ना कुछ broken.
Fair enough.
But at least match to kar do.
Fair enough.
Right? Now, we are also going to assume that you acquired the right kind of people.
Which is unhealthy assumption in a lot of situations, but yeah, let's go.
Let's just assume that you acquired the right kind of people.
Is there a way to judge that a priori? What kind of, let's say, decision-making infra you need to have in place to be able to judge that?
Yes. So, if you have not acquired people through very heavy discounts, if you have not acquired people through very dodgy funnels like Telegram, bots, and God knows what are the other channels that are out there.
Sure.
If you have potentially made sure that the journey that the customer has taken to purchase something is a bit more informed.
Right.
And you have also seen your social traction go up and people mentioning you on social after they have bought the product, which shows some degree of quality.
Right.
I think that goes on to say that the funnel was right.
Okay.
Right. I'll take a classic example. Okay. There is heads or tails at any point of time. On an average on Instagram, ends up getting, on a daily basis, between 500 to 600 tags a day.
Okay.
These are people who have taken
a product, take a picture of them,
clicked it,
with it,
tagged heads of a tail.
Correct.
Right? I think that's a phenomenal metric.
Yeah.
Because it shows that we are acquiring the right kind of people who are now going to go on social and speak well of us.
Yeah.
Do they only come back and buy from us? No. They're buying from different places.
Sure. But at least it's the ICP.
Exactly. Right. And that gives us a certain degree of confidence that if we were to give these people something extra, something special, by extra I don't mean discount, it could be anything. An experience, they will potentially stick with me longer.
Okay.
Now imagine a situation where no one really comes back and even tags you on Instagram. No one posts.
In that category, that is a...
You might be selling a lot, but no one comes and does anything. They don't care for the brand. There's no love. There's no pride. Right? Mostly. I'm just talking about consumer products and consumer categories.
In that category, it's a fair reflection of a degree of brand affinity forming.
You'll be surprised how much that happens in makeup, that happens in hair care, it happens in shoes, it happens across fashion, it happens in cell phones, everywhere.
Social mentions are like a proxy to brand affinity.
New. 90% of the time, you're going to take a picture and you're going to upload it.
Sure.
India is going through an aspirational curve.
So
everyone wants to show.
Yeah.
Unless you're buying unless you're buying a toothpaste or a toothbrush, which also I'm sure my friends at Pofar are going to say that
exactly.
I would assume that you're literally going to take pictures of everything and post it and say, I now have this, I have arrived. Right?
Fair.
Now, if that's not happening to you as a brand.
At all. I mean, to whatever scale. Something which is...
You're selling, let's say, 1,000 units in a month and you get one tag. Something's
nobody cares.
Something's wrong. Okay? You're not selling to the right people. Maybe you don't even care for that Instagram audience. That is okay. But then your entire retention funnel approach changes.
Sure.
Then it's no longer about, okay, how do I get these people back through the power of content or through craft or any of it? No. Then it's about, I've got these 999 people who don't really care about flaunting the brand. They potentially want something completely different from me. I have to be able to figure out what that is and then drive my retention through. So you have to have a clear sense of who are you selling to? the kind of customers you are getting because of whom you are going to be deploying what.
Sure.
So the
this
choice
is
that
an
you
ongoing
make is
insights-based. I mean, there's a certain amount of
so which by the way
hypotheses which will be
also
validated.
by the way no current technology gives me.
Tell me more about this.
So if I'm putting people through the retention funnel,
Right.
I'm doing very simple cohort slicing, right?
Segmentation is very linear in nature.
Yeah, extremely linear, right? Almost sorry to use the word moronic at some stage, right? I mean, but hai to hai yaar.
जो है.
ठीक है, I mean, 90-day purchasers, laggards, whatever, recency, some degree of frequency, monetary
But
aspect,
also to do
blah,
with
blah.
first party data being finite.
हाँ तो बस उतना ही है ना.
जो
So
है वही है.
I'm not saying that it's a problem of the tool. I'm just saying it's a problem of the system that we have built.
Sure.
And it's not a system that you built alone. It's a system that marketers have built, businesses
in some sense, more first party data would help, but how do you get it?
Right. Now, at this moment, when I'm putting people through this funnel and I have segmented that funnel and people are not responding to that funnel or people are responding to the funnel, there is no quality indicator. Right? And a quality indicator for me could be like just a simple nudge or a question that makes people take 2 seconds extra to do.
Sure.
Simple. Something like, it's almost like a very, very nice sort of an NPS indicator that you end up building, which is, hey, do you like this? How was your just this experience? Just till here, how has your experience been? Did you know this?
Sure.
Right? A little bit of content push, which makes them think and maybe they can act on that.
Sure.
Right? I just think that the human experience can be made so much richer. And by richness of the content, and I keep speaking of content because the world runs on that.
Sure.
We can keep saying tools and data, and I love both, but I think data informs me to build what kind of content that needs to go out, and the tool just helps me disperse it and maybe analyze where it's landed. But if the craft itself is not right, then you're not really going to achieve a lot. So for me, I think the quality of that interaction, which ideally should be part of the mechanism itself, right? I haven't seen that happen.
Might have to do with the fact that the people who are doing this are not looking at life from that lens yet.
Sure.
That's also an education and training problem to solve.
Well, I mean, if you ask what people want, they're going to say faster horses. So same logic, you can't, if you're building the ecosystem and if you're training people and if you're really...
Might as well cover these basics.
You cover it. Fair. You cover it, you build that nudge. You say, okay, this is, day 0 versus day 30. By day 30, we are going to send people a very soft nudge. And that nudge is going to help us understand what kind of a customer is this.
Fair.
Right?
I think I've somehow been a little more inclined in thanks to the nature of things we've done in life, I think. To me, the craft ends up being how do I very effectively personalize every bit of communication, because the smartest of copies, what will resonate with Samriddh might not be the same thing that will resonate with Ankur, which means I need to know Samriddh has a cat who has this blah 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 situation versus Ankur has a dog who is just adopted like a year ago and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
So whatever has to come to me and versus has to come to you, there are, let's say in a sentence, 3 words which are craft.
Yeah.
7 words which are actually personalized. But to construct this perfectly nicely is both art and science. And that's where this is like a big gap.
That's first person data. That's privileged. Most brands don't have that. They've acquired people. They have sold them a shaving foam or a hair gel or something like that. No, nothing.
Yeah, but they've not done those. But they don't know all of this.
But they won't know all of this.
Yes.
So at that moment, how do you make sure that they're not just pushing more money into a funnel which has zero quality?
True.
Because the quality of that funnel is what is a massive suspect.
But I've seen happen elsewhere in different industries, right? So this whole 30-day ROAS, for example, is a line item that, I am not optimizing for kya, I'm optimizing for whether there's an M1 or M4 repeat or not.
Correct.
And that's what seems to be the practice across some industries we've seen. It's not the most commonplace. But again, from the maturity curve, I think the people slightly ahead of the curve in some sense are looking at this already, because I don't acquire terrible quality customers and then ultimately they'll not repeat. It'll blow up my CAC. It doesn't help anything.
Correct.
So this whole calibrated growth, because quality is a conscious factor, becomes the order which...
that started to happen literally about a year and a half back.
Pretty much.
So we will have to see the maturity of both retention marketing, maturity of marketeers not doing growth at all cost, businesses being extremely cognizant that they have to acquire people who will not only remain with them, but speak positively of them. I think a certain amount of community disposition being built into businesses where we are able to give back more than always take. Not only turn this into a discount-driven conversation, but turn this into a value-driven conversation. Ensure that content and the craft of content becomes almost a tent pole on which the business is built. customer centricity not being the function of one department, but it being the sort of almost
Company-wide
moral
manifestation.
obligation of the entire organization. Top down, ensuring that retention becomes a conversation on the table, not just as a metric and a QBR.
Small little corner item.
Yeah, like it's somewhere there, but retention becoming a conversation, primarily even when you start looking at valuation metrics.
Sure.
Which is super important, because then automatically valuation metrics start to get very linear and slightly more logical. Slightly more logical. I think that's really where the world is moving. I think technology aids adoption of the practice,
sure,
but it's not the start. It's not the end of it.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, it's
a
table
facilitate.
stakes.
Yeah,
I would call it table stakes because you can't do a bunch of things without it, but it's not enough. I mean, necessary but not sufficient, to put it in a simple language.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fair. Samriddh, we've spoken a lot about the fact that this whole maturity curve is where it is, and there's a lot of conceptual evolution that has happened to a certain extent. Founders are asking the right questions, investors are seem to be asking the right questions, retention is becoming a boardroom conversation. At least that kind of preparedness has happened. But in your impression, in the ecosystem, and I'm sure observing brands everywhere, you're probably working with some of them. What's your, let's say, assessment? Who's doing a great job? What's your gold standard of retention that they're, I've seen them do these 10 things. That sounds impressive by your standards, and I'm sure they're pretty high.
Honestly, none.
Okay.
Honestly, none.
Sure.
I think, the banking industry started by doing a whole bunch of right things.
Okay.
Then they screwed it up by putting too many telecallers. Actually, I'll tell you why none. One, because I don't fall for the retention pieces, and I don't think there are too many new age customers who end up falling for the retention unless they have massive love for the product.
Sure.
So the product precedes anything else. Right. So that's number one. I think some brands which have been able to do an effective job of reminding me of their value. So let's reterm this a little.
Sure.
Brands that have been effective in reminding me of the value that they bring to my life. And I don't know if they have mature systems or immature systems. But one, I genuinely love the way that Nicobar communicates with me. I think it's just done beautifully. Again, listen, I'm a sucker for great design.
I'm meeting Raul day after tomorrow, so I'd love to communicate this on your behalf.
I'm a sucker for great design, and I think anything that is written with a certain amount of love and care,
it shows across.
It just comes across. I'm a biker, so Royal Enfield has been able to do that really well. For me, they contextualize a lot of comms that comes my way, depending on my bike and the gear that I have and so on and so forth. So I think they are able to do a good job of that. I think interestingly, a lot of my investment apps do a very good job.
Okay.
They don't just send me what's happening with my portfolio, but they do end up sending me a little bit of a, did you know that you could do this too?
Sure.
Right. And as early stage, let's say investors or early stage sort of market players, little bit helps.
Is this personalized to you?
To some extent, yes.
Are they cognizant of your life stage as an early stage
I can
investor?
recognize the pattern. I've started to recognize the pattern now. So, there's like I look at index funds, small case. So for example, they will try to contextualize it, but suddenly one in the middle will be like a slightly large cap.
Sure.
And they'll be like, this is also performing in a similar way. So it's not a massive deviation from what my usual behavior / discovery pattern would be.
Right.
So I think that's well done. Of course, I mean, all kinds of entertainment apps, and they're doing like a phenomenal bloody job.
I mean, all the automation that gets involved, right? For people like Netflix, it's just.
But then I'm feeding them that data, so I would expect that, right? If you can't get that right, then bloody well get out of the business.
Your expectations, right? Your benchmarks are set because of the Amazon and the Netflixes, which are global products.
Yeah.
And now the Indian folks are like really starting to catch up with that expectation.
Yeah, but look at the amount of richness of data that I give a Netflix or an OTT or someone else, right? I mean, they know every little detail of my life, and it's a little disturbing.
Spooky.
Exactly. So I don't think too many people do it really well. I think brands which have a maturity curve inbuilt into their system where they have the patience to nurture me.
Yeah.
And it's a patience to nurture. It's not a patience to sell. They're two different things. Nurturing, and a lot of people get that very wrong.
Yeah.
Right? So they'll start to bombard people with sale. And I think that really screws it up. And I don't react to any of it. I don't think any of us react to any of it. We have 6-7 of us in this room, and I don't think anyone is really going to react to any of it. But if someone was to be able to contextualize content,
Fun fact is, for some reason, this shit still goes on because it seems to be delivering something. I don't know what, but it does.
one, it's easy. Second, it's dopamine.
Gives you something.
Gives you something. Third is that no one has really tried the other way
Yeah,
with a certain amount of patience. So the
True.
problem is patience,
Hmm.
right? So for me, I think broadly that
Right.
I haven't really experienced any other brand which has been able to communicate to me with the value
Sure.
that they potentially can and should.
Hmm.
But yeah, I hope that many others can.
Well, we hope, but it certainly changes, Samriddh. As a fractional CMO, I'm pretty certain you will bring this conversation to mainstream across the brands that you
I've been
engage
doing
with.
that for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
You've been advising people regardless. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know what kind of engagement models, but we do believe that you will have a positive influence in a lot of sensibility that should come into the ecosystem here onwards.
hopefully,
Yes.
hopefully. Let's see.
All the best with that. Our
Thank
endeavor
you.
continues to remain educating people, and this was extremely useful for being so candid. So thank you for that.
No, absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Super. Thank you, Samriddh.
Thanks, man.
I must say, that podcast truly lived up to its promise, delivering a wealth of insights and sparking some truly engaging conversations. Personally, I gained a lot from Samriddh's perspectives. Now, we're eager to hear your thoughts on the episode. If you enjoyed it, please do take a moment to rate us and follow us on your favorite streaming platforms. This ensures you'll never miss our new content. We've got some incredible brands and speakers lined up, and we can't wait for you to join us. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to reach out to us at sormpodcast@webbingage.com. Stay tuned for more amazing content coming your way.